Welcome to this week's episode of Biz Success in 15, where top experts share hot tips and strategies that you can implement in as little as 15 minutes to build your dream business. And now here's your host, the Visibility Wiz, Cindy J.
Hi, I'm Cindy J, the Visibility Wiz. Welcome to this episode of Biz Success in 15, where top experts share hot tips and strategies that you can implement in as little as 15 minutes. Today, our guest is Dr. Heidi Forbes Öste. She is a behavioral scientist, a best-selling author of Digital Mastery. She combines 25 years' experience in global social strategy consulting with her scholarly research in the human relationship with technology and her personal passion for well-being. Her groundbreaking work provides a unique perspective on how to survive and thrive in the digital era. She integrates behavior science, well-being, and system thinking. She founded the movement for digital self-mastery to support the transition into the digital era without losing humanity in the process. So welcome, Heidi.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you, and I'm so excited to have you today. It's such a unique topic and work that you do, but it's so necessary in today's world. So before we start talking about digital mastery, I would love it if you could share a challenge that you had to overcome in order to achieve your level of success.
Well, I tell you, Cindy, one of my biggest challenges, and I think this unfortunately is a growing challenge for a lot of people in America, is I really struggled with some autoimmune disorders that really created all kinds of different physical and psychological impacts on my ability to be productive and active in the world. Everything from brain fog to debilitating, just lack of energy, couldn't get off the couch. And I found a way to really use technology to support me through that process so that I could, still be connected to the world, still be connected to my work, and find my way back to a thriving business.
Wow, that's really, I love that you said that. I know a lot of people, as you said, have struggled with that. So, I know even I have a sister-in-law who has really struggled with autoimmune disease, and she still managed to get up and go to work and do what she had to do, but it's really hard to do that. So what do you think was one of the key points with you being able to overcome that too, or how do you manage it with your success?
I think it was being open to and willing to let technology support me in the way that I needed, and to not feel like I had to do it all on my own. Using technology both as a way to get help from my community and to reach out using social technologies, but also using a lot of the well-being technologies, the wearables and things, for helping me track what was going on with my body so that I could really understand what my capability each day was and what my limitations were.
Okay, so you really embraced the digital era to help you grow out, and even with your business, the technology where so much of it can just run on its own, so you don't have to be there to baby it constantly.
Absolutely. Yeah. Automation was key.
Mm-hmm. And, I know you always talk about humanizing technology. Can you explain what you mean by humanizing technology?
Well, so it's about not losing your humanity rather than humanizing the technology. As we're seeing technology is becoming more integrated into our lives, if you look around you in the room that you're in, that pretty much everything around you has been touched or impacted by technology, and that impacts how we move in the world. And so it's really about finding the technology that works with us in a way that we can have a fluid relationship rather than a disruptive relationship with it, where it doesn't decrease our humanity, but rather enhances it. It gives us more ability to be who we are and the best us, or the best, the best that we can be.
And in connections, I know I was speaking, I believe, with another guest about this. It could have been a friend, but technology has grown so much in the past, even 100 years. I was watching a show about how the history of cars in America, and they were talking about how cars were so exciting because people could travel 10 miles from their house.
Mm-hmm.
And to think in only 10 years, 100 years, how much we have grown, where we can talk with people in any country in the world and actually see them.
Yeah.
My father, for some odd reason, had this, he used to always say, one day you're going to be able to see the person you're talking to on the phone. And I thought the man had lost his mind. I was like, there's no way that that would ever be possible. And so every time, I connect with somebody and see them while I'm talking to them online, I'm like, how did my father, in the 60s and 70s have this foresight that one day would be able to see somebody and talk to them?
It's so true. And I mean, we're no longer limited by time and space. And, to play on what your father said, I asked my son what he thought the future would be. And he said, I'd be hanging out with my friends' holograms.
Oh, right. That's cool.
Right.
Yes.
So, I mean, and we're sitting there thinking, wow, that sounds very sci-fi, but it's true. I mean, it's already happening.
Right.
So, it's happening so much faster, and it's more about embracing the advantages and the opportunities that it provides, rather than fearing it and having more psychological and well-being issues when those opportunities arise.
Right. And a lot of the shows, even, from the 60s, The Twilight Zone, or you watch shows like Back to the Future, it's very interesting because a lot of things that were so sci-fi then are reality for us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's really good. And, I often hear, especially with coaches, small business owners, entrepreneurs, they're like, oh, I can't do that. I'm not techie enough. And I don't know if it's like fear of the computer or what it is. And so can you share a little bit about, whenever people are saying this, what's their relationship with technology and what steps can they take to improve their relationship with technology?
Yeah, so the premise of my book, which is Digital Self-Mastery, is really looking at the different digital self-profiles, and particularly people in our industry that are delivering our products and services online. And we may not be coming from a tech background, but we're using technology very adamantly within our, and we're reliant on it. So the people in our industry, I would say, probably tend to lie in sort of the curious, or they really are not on the end of the spectrum where they're averse, or on the other end of the spectrum, which is more like the digital addict, because those are less functional in that environment, and they tend to sort of pendulum back and forth, but depending on their different experiences. And one of the key things that you can do is just to recognize what your relationship is with the technology first. So you recognize what are the triggers that are causing that fear or that reaction of I can't, rather than embracing it and saying, yes, I am capable of this, or I can up to this point, and here's where I'm comfortable delegating to get somebody else to do this, because this is not my wheelhouse or where my time is best spent. Because really you want to be looking at your high value actions in where you're spending your energy. So there's two very simple things that I ask people to do. And the very first thing is really developing a gratitude practice around their technology. And it sounds like a funny thing, but it's really recognizing where technology adds value to your life and to your work. And it sort of changes that, it creates a shift in that relationship of sort of anger or anxiety to appreciation.
I love that. I would have never thought of that. I know I keep a gratitude journal, and I do oftentimes say things like, I'm grateful for my computer. I'm grateful that I found somebody to do this for me. I have faith that I can learn anything I want to learn, but the big question is, do I want to learn it, or would I rather have somebody else just do it, that it's their passion?
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me because at one time I was, especially before Windows, I was so computer illiterate. I went to a job interview and they wanted me to take a typing test on an old computer, and I had to go from drive A to drive B And I sat there for the whole 20 minutes trying to figure out how to go from drive A to drive B. And I look at where I'm at now and I'm like, wow, because I really felt inept and stupid back then. And I'm like, I've really learned a lot, self-taught myself a lot.
Yeah.
And it's, if you decide to do something, you can, and then it's embracing it. My kids always ask me how I ever lived without a computer. And I just go, well, I didn't know what I was missing because I live on the computer. It's my business, but it's also my life. And so with the fears, whenever people are afraid of it, sometimes it goes so much into like limiting beliefs. Hey, I'm afraid of this. And I love the take. Let's be grateful, because if you're grateful, you can't be afraid and grateful for something at the same time. Yeah. And you had mentioned you had 2 steps. So what's the second step?
So the first step is the gratitude practice. And then the second step is really looking at what things might be semi-toxic for you. So, and that's sort of looking at your general tech ecosystem. And by that, I mean, is sort of what are you using heavily that is technology that needs to communicate with each other. So if you think about the game Operator, where, you're passing things along the line, the more connection pieces and the more miscommunication that occurs along that line, the greater opportunity for failure or for problems to occur. And if you're using different devices that don't communicate well with each other, apps that don't communicate well with each other, apps that don't communicate well with you, or you're using resources, whether it's a VA or a tech person that doesn't communicate in your language, so you're asking them to do one thing, but they're delivering something else. Those are all different places that you can identify their triggers that are causing your anxiety, one, but that are also causing disruption in your flow. And so it's really looking at your whole tech ecosystem and identifying where those trigger points are and where the breakage in the links are, so that you can, figure out what's the best way to smooth that out. And it may be, for example, I work in a Mac ecosystem, an Apple ecosystem, because it's very fluid for me. I'm not saying that's what everybody should do, but that's one that works well for me. My whole family is on an Apple ecosystem, and that means we can all communicate with each other, we can track each other, et cetera, et cetera. If someone was to bring in a PC into my house, it wouldn't communicate with my printer. It wouldn't communicate with all the other devices. It'll still function. Like my mother comes in with her PC and she wants to print a picture. And it becomes this whole kerfuffle that it's easier for her to email it to me and then I take care of it.
Right. How can somebody ensure that that everything is talking their language? And how can somebody even determine what's the best way for them?
So one thing you can do is to journal the interactions with your tech ecosystem and even map it out. That's one of the things that I do with people in my program, is mapping out their tech ecosystem so they can see where the potential issues are arising and also where things are working very fluidly. And that's where some people who may have a mixed ecosystem identify things that work really well or maybe need to be upgraded, or just identify where those triggers are, because ultimately you want that communication stream to be very fluid. And sometimes it's an individual, it's a person, as I mentioned before, that's actually the challenge, because especially when you're delegating things on a tech basis, sometimes those are 2 different languages that you're speaking. And, that doesn't necessarily mean you need to replace that person, but you need to recognize that there's a translation that needs to occur.
It's just like some people will have...
Asking for is not the same output that you're receiving.
Yeah. It's just like if, some people will have a different sense of humor. Some people have different languages. I also want to add that I think it's so important to use technology to get support. Because if you have a system and something isn't working right, you can go on Facebook, on Twitter, and just ask a question, and somebody's going to know something that's going to point you in the right direction.
Absolutely, yeah. Asking for help is so key, and and there's no shame in it, because everybody's learning. It's constantly changing and evolving. There's always someone that knows more or knows less than you. So you can be the expert one time, and somebody else can be your expert. the
Right.
next.
And even if you're an expert at something, there could be little tiny parts of it that you're not an expert on, that somebody else just
Absolutely.
learned something new or has been doing something a little different. I'm always amazed. I love doing these interviews because things that I thought I was like completely on top of, and somebody says something, I'm like, wow, I never thought of that. That's really great. I would like to ask you if you can share a strategy with our listeners that they can implement in as little as 15 minutes a day for their own business success.
Well, I think in terms of technology, and this may not sound like a strategy, but it really is patience. And actually the patience is not necessarily, patience is with everything, but patience with yourself.
Can you elaborate on that a little
When
bit?
I'm doing my, yeah, when I start my day with, I know I've got a really complex system that I'm working with, the first thing I do is just remember to breathe, because sometimes there's things that can cause more stressful issues that don't necessarily need to. So say for example, like we were just experiencing the sound didn't work for a second. That could actually cause all kinds of different well-being and technology other issues. But instead, it's just pause, take a breath, and say, okay, it is what it is. Mm-hmm. And actually, we're really lucky to be able to be having this conversation, despite the fact that we aren't in the same time and space, and we're able to share it with other people in another time and space, and just be grateful for what is working, because if you give it a little bit of patience, things will work out. And you can take the time to tweak and to adjust. And so I think patience in terms of success and in terms of a strategy is really important when it comes to technology, because we have to recognize the fact that it's moving incredibly fast. The iPhone came out 10 years ago, but it wasn't until probably 7 years ago that people were really, it was just sort of a mainstream, and smartphones in general, that they were mainstream. People are still trying to get up to date. So when we get angry that things aren't instantaneous or we get stressed out, we need to be patient. These things are going to change. When you have an update, take a deep breath, let it go, load its update. There may be some tweaks with it, but it will be better. So
I love even that you said updates. I had an update on my computer not too long ago. So it just got stuck, the little circle going around and round and round. I'm like, why is this thing taking so long? But I decided I'm just going to let it go, and it'll be done by the morning. So I just did some other stuff. I read a book. I went to sleep, and I get up, and it's still going in a circle. I'm like, well, I don't think it should take this long. So my husband, even though he was a tech person for years, isn't real good with Windows 10. But luckily, I have a shop in town that's really good. So I took it to them, and it was really my time on my computer wasn't correct, and it was causing it to snag. And I was like, wow, who would have thought? But if I would have been frustrated, I would have just, and the guy didn't even charge me anything to fix it. He just real quick noticed it. And that's where I think asking for support, but also it's being patient. Sometimes I just wasn't meant to work at my computer that night. I was meant to read and take a step back. And so I love the patience, because that's going to help your well-being. And also it's like, what can I do? Sometimes whenever you take that step back, then you're allowing the creativity to flow with how to fix it, or you're allowing the right person to come into your life to fix it.
Yeah. And I would say the other key strategy piece, which another doesn't sound like it's a technology thing, but be kind to your technology. We abuse it so much, and then we expect so much of it. Just think about your smartphone. People run out the batteries to the very end and then get frustrated that it won't charge properly. They drop them all the time, and then they're like, why isn't this thing working? And I can't read my screen. That's not the phone's fault. That's you're not being kind to it. And it displays in so many other ways. It's unfortunately, because it's more digital and less mechanical, not like with the old TVs. I don't know, maybe I think we're probably around the same age, but I think we all grew up with an old TV that it would get fuzzy. You go up and you slam your hand on it and it would work. If something needed to be jostled on the inside, please don't do that with modern technology. It will only make it worse. So it's be kind to your technology, and it'll be kind to you.
Yes. Patience, have patience with technology and patience with yourself, and be kind to technology and it'll be kind to you. Those are really, really great strategies. And really and truly, it is just taking those, it's less than 15 minutes, because whenever you feel yourself starting to get stressed or anxious, just remind yourself to be kind to yourself, to be patient, and that everything will work out. And
ask for help if it's not.
yes. And yeah, always ask for help. So I do understand that you have a great gift for our listeners. Can you share us about it?
Sure. It's just a fun little thing. It's a digital detox readiness quiz, and it just helps you sort of assess where you're at in terms of your technology use. What I love to do with this test is not only do it myself, but also give it to somebody else to find out their perception of whether I need a digital detox in my relationship with them. So it's a fun one to do, but also maybe even print it out and have somebody else take it with you in mind, and give it to your kids too.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm sure any 6-year-old would ace it.
Maybe.
Okay, yes. And so to get the link to the quiz, and I do recommend you go to bizsuccessin15.com and grab the link so you can take Heidi's test and discover where you are at technology, and also get some great tips on how to improve your relationship with technology. Technology is just going to continue to grow, and you want somebody like Heidi and there to help you with learning it, to be patient and kind to yourself as it evolves, and to develop a great relationship with it. Did you have any parting words for us today, Heidi?
I think just the most important thing is to remember it's going to keep on evolving, so it's best to evolve with it, and to keep that gratitude practice going, and you'll find that you'll thrive just fine.
Okay, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in today, and thank Heidi for being my guest. Be sure to visit bizsuccessin15.com and grab the link to go take Heidi's test. You can also re-listen to this episode, or you can listen to other episodes. And I do want to say big hugs to you, and tune in next week for Biz Success in 15. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Biz Success in 15. For all links mentioned in today's show, and to watch or listen to previous episodes, visit bizsuccessin15.com. Thanks so much for listening, and be sure to tune in next week for another amazing guest.